I find our silences and our actions quite inexplicable, frankly. I mean, not to have anything to say when the head of state of a state you recognize in your neighborhood is assassinated by another country, by not signing the condolence book for 5 days and then sending the foreign secretary, not the foreign minister, not the prime minister. I mean, that, to my mind, and to stay absolutely silent on the issues, not to condemn the attack, not to, and this has unfortunately become part of a pattern. You're not willing to call the Russian invasion of Ukraine an invasion. You're not willing to vote when Palestinians are being slaughtered in Gaza on the West Bank. You're not willing to vote. You abstain on votes in the UN. I find this very strange and rather sad that a country like India, with its traditions, should end up being absolutely mum.
How do you think the BRICS countries will view India's silence?
Not very well, not at all. And I think they'd find it hard to explain why we are silent on these issues and why we're not willing to say, after all, your motto on your national emblem is Satyameva Jayate. And yet you're not willing to express this truth and have done so now, as I said, for several years on all the issues that matter. They find this inexplicable, and it certainly diminishes your reputation and your image in the world, but it also diminishes your effectiveness in the world.
Finally, Mr. Menon, we in India like to believe, and this government in particular has claimed, that India's foreign policy has charted a course of strategic autonomy. Was India's response to the US-Israel strikes and to the killing of Ayatollah Khamenei an illustration of that or a contradiction of it?
Well, it's an example of autonomy from previous Indian foreign policy. That's the best you can say about it.
In other words, it's a contradiction of the previous foreign policy, isn't it?
It is.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Is Operation Epic Fury in danger of becoming Operation Epic Failure? Have differences and divisions broken out within Iran's leadership, or is Iran resilient and capable of fighting for a lot longer? Could rising oil prices undermine President Trump's resolve? And what about India's position on the US-Israel-Iran war? Has it enhanced the country's image or detracted from it? Those are the key issues I shall put to former National Security Advisor, former Foreign Secretary, and former Ambassador to Israel, Shivshankar Menon. Mr. Menon, yesterday, Gideon Rachman, the chief foreign affairs commentator of the Financial Times, tweeted to say that with oil at $110 a barrel and another Khamenei as head of Iran, Operation Epic Fury, he said, could be in danger of transforming into Operation Epic Failure. Was Rachman exaggerating, or has he put his finger on an emerging truth?
I don't think he's far wrong. But I'm not so sure that you can make a categorical statement that it's a failure because, frankly, we don't know what the objectives of Epic Fury were. we've heard different versions of why the US decided to bomb Iran again. We were told regime change. We were told to eliminate Iran's nuclear program. Mr. Trump, who told us in June last year that he had obliterated Iran's nuclear program, now said that Iran was 2 weeks away from a bomb. We've been told it's to eliminate Iran's ballistic missile program. We've been told it's for a whole host of reasons to change Iran's regional behavior. So since you have shifting justifications, but I don't think Rahman is wrong because by any of these counts, and I've mentioned four of them, certainly Epic Fury has not achieved its goals, if those were its goals. But we've just heard Mr. Trump saying that we're nearing the end and that it's very successful. We've heard him say this yesterday in a press conference. It's almost as though he's declaring victory without ever having told us in the beginning what he was aiming at.
Absolutely. What he said yesterday is that the war will end pretty quickly, but in the very next breath, he also said the US hasn't won enough. And later he tweeted that he would guarantee death, fire, and fury if Iran tried to stop oil passing through the Strait of Hormuz. So he says different things at different times, literally minutes apart from each other.
Exactly. My point exactly, that he's given different justifications, says different things. So I, quite frankly, have stopped listening to what is being said out of Washington or out of Jerusalem. And for me, the only thing to watch is really what they do.
Tell me, in your eyes, is Trump confused or is this strategic, deliberate, different statements?
Well, if this is deliberate obfuscation, then it confuses his own people, his allies, some of whom actually are casualties of this operation. So I don't see deliberate plan in what we've heard so far.
Meanwhile, sorry.
But what you can do is to see, if you look at what they were doing, what the Americans are doing, they've been trying to use a whole set of means to try and reduce Iran's not just effectiveness, but in fact its very utility as a geopolitical actor in the Middle East. I mean, they've been talking about, and they're in touch with the Kurds, for instance, with minorities in Iran. I wouldn't be surprised if there were Iranians, if there weren't special forces, US special forces, already in Sistan, where the Balocha. They've tried to work with the Azeris because 60% of the Azeris are in Iran, not in Azerbaijan. So for me, you've seen the US attempting everything, decapitating the leadership, eliminating the leader, trying to invoke a popular rebellion. I mean, you've seen a sort of full spectrum offensive against Iran. But where they want it to end, what their definition of victory is very unclear.
Let me pick up on the point you made. Iran, as you point out, has been severely hit, yet it hasn't collapsed. Instead, it's appointed a new
There's no sign of defections. There's no sign of, I mean, I'm sure if there had been even the slightest sign of that, this would have been tom-tommed across the world by Iran's opponents. It is really quite remarkable. But for Iran, frankly, the criteria of success is much more limited. Survival and increasing the pain for US allies and for the US public by raising oil prices, and maybe even for other countries who are dependent on oil from the Middle East, India, China, Japan, so that there's pressure on the US to back down.
Would you therefore agree with what Kissinger said, that if Iran doesn't lose but survives, it's actually won, whereas if Trump doesn't win, in effect, he's lost?
Exactly. That's a good summary of where we are today. But the only problem there, as we said in the beginning, is we don't know what is winning for Trump.
Tell me something. Not only has Iran been able to fairly swiftly choose a new supreme leader, but it continues to fire missiles and drones at the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and of course, Israel itself. What do you believe is the source of this resilience? Is it just spirit? Is it determination? Or is it actually a fair degree of military preparedness which the West hasn't acknowledged?
I think there's an under-acknowledgement of Iran's not just military preparedness and statecraft, but also of their industrial capacity. This is a country which developed drones which the Russians have been buying from them. And they've set up production lines in Russia for their friends. You look at their rate of production, look at the ingenuity involved in using, say, $30,000 drones, which can be intercepted, which are being intercepted by Israel and the US, using missiles which cost $4 to $9 million. And frankly, according to some accounts, in the first week of the war, Israel and the US have fired off something like 1/3 of the total global inventory of interceptor missiles.
There has,
And they
however,
can't
been
replace it. They don't have the industrial capacity or the factories in place, whereas Iran has been at war for a long time, prepared for this. After June last year, knew the other attack was coming. I mean, all of us have seen this coming for a long time. And they've decentralized command and control, prepared for it, and they've got tactics that they are using. But as you said, survival for them is one, but the other is to inflict pain and to show that the US cannot have its way, that the US security guarantees do not protect her allies in the Gulf, Qatar, UAE, etc.
I hear what you're saying, Mr. Menon, but there has been at least one discordant note from Iran. On Saturday, President Pezeshkian apologized to the Gulf countries for attacking them and promised that Iran would not hit them if they did not hit Iran. Within hours, he was criticized by fellow members of the Interim Leadership Council as well as members of the IRGC. On Sunday, he seemed to retreat from what he had said. How do you read that? Are there differences, maybe even divisions, in the Iranian leadership after the death of Ayatollah Khamenei?
I think there will be differences on tactics. I mean, there will always be differences in the middle of a war about how far to go in responding. But the fact is that command and control of these weapons has been decentralized, and Iran now has a modular structure. So that even taking out the top 40 leaders of the country hasn't stopped them from retaliating. And despite the statements that the president made, the firing of drones and missiles by Iran continued right through.
Now,
So,
Trump,
as I
as you
said,
know,
I would go, it doesn't matter whether it's Washington, Jerusalem, Tehran, they have to make statements depending on what they think works for them at home, primarily, but also internationally. I would go by what they do.
okay.
And what the Iranians, judging by their rate of fire, which is much slower than what they had last June, what their tactic is to drag this on for as long as possible and to inflict as much pain as possible on the US through oil prices and so on US allies who might have influence, the Sunni Gulf
This is
monarchies,
this is the
and
Vali
so on.
Nasser theory. The longer the war drags on, the stronger Iran's position and capacity to negotiate.
I don't know. I don't know whether they'll be stronger or weaker because in the meantime they are taking a pounding.
No,
So
I
I'd
meant
be very
capacity to
careful.
negotiate. I meant
To
capacity to
negotiate, I
negotiate, not
mean,
military
it
strength.
depends who they're negotiating with. With their experience of negotiating last year and again this year, and according to the Omanis who were mediating, they had a deal and were then attacked that night. So, given that experience of negotiating, I don't think it's about how strong their negotiating position is or their bargaining ability. Now it's a question of ensuring that the US thinks twice before attacking them.
Now, Trump has also said that the new Iranian supreme leader is unacceptable to him. Earlier, he dismissed him as a lightweight. He earlier said he wanted to be involved in choosing the person. He said now that this new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, won't last long. Do you expect he'll make an attempt to try and take him out by kinetic action?
I'm almost sure he will, but I mean, frankly, look at what we have come to. when the leader of the most powerful country on earth goes around not just assassinating other leaders, but then threatening their successors and saying publicly that this is the. I mean, there seems to actually almost be enjoyment in this kind of lawless behavior. I think it's sad. Judging by what they've done so far, yes, certainly they will try and take out the leadership. And they've said this is one of their goals. You don't have to listen to Trump, you listen to his Secretary of Defense or War or whatever he calls himself now. And some of those statements actually, it makes you wonder whether they are aware of international law, whether they're aware of morality at all.
On Monday, Qatar, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia spoke of betrayal by Iran. They used particularly strong language to criticize Iran's unacceptable and unjustified strikes. Those were their words. Do you see the Gulf countries directly retaliating and entering the war, or will they continue to exercise restraint because they don't want to exacerbate the situation?
They haven't so far. And frankly, yes, what Iran has done by widening the conflict, strictly speaking, in law may not be acceptable, but then that's why they justify it by saying any place that's used to attack us, we are free to attack. And the Gulf states have been on warning since last June by the Iranians that if anybody hits us, we're going to hit those who hit us wherever they are, whether they're in the Gulf states or elsewhere. So, I would treat these statements as meant more to establish a position, to tell their own people that they're doing something. But whether they have the military capability to actually retaliate and do real damage and change the course of this war, I'm not sure.
Yesterday,
And so far at least, I mean, some pretty basic attacks have taken place on their on critical infrastructure, oil facilities, ports, hotels, etc.
including US
And
embassies and consulates.
well, U.S. embassies, you can say, are justified because it's the U.S. which has attacked Iran first. So, and that the Iranians have always said, we will attack those who attack us, wherever they may be. But given all that, and they haven't retaliated so far, I would expect it would take something pretty horrendous by the Iranians to provoke the Gulf states into actually responding militarily.
Yesterday,
Diplomatically, yes, etc. But
Yesterday, the G7 countries held an emergency meeting to discuss rising oil prices and to consider whether they should start releasing oil from their strategic reserves, but the meeting came to no agreement. Earlier, the Qatari energy minister warned that the price of oil could rise to $150, and he warned that there would be damage to the world's economies. Could this put pressure on Trump to end the war sooner rather than later? I noticed that by the end of the day, he was talking about the war ending pretty quickly, even though in the next breath he also said America hadn't won enough. But could he be under pressure both domestically and from his allies that, look, the oil situation is becoming intolerable, you have to bring this war to an early conclusion?
I think the real pressure will be domestic. I don't think he would want to go into the midterm elections with oil at $5 a gallon at US pumps. And the average price has already jumped from something like $3.19 to almost 3.9 on the US average. And I think inflation in the US, what the war and what their attack on Iran has done to US stocks, for instance, and to bonds, I think that is what is going to have much more effect on his thinking, judging by his past behavior.
So you think this could lie behind his saying the war could end pretty quickly?
You will see more and more of his allies whom he was unable to protect, asking him to try and step in. So threats of $150 per barrel oil and so on, I think would come in that category of things.
Let's come, Mr. Menon, to the position India has taken. How do you view India's response to the US-Israel strikes on Iran and the killing of Ayatollah Khamenei? The scholar Srinath Raghavan, in an essay that he's written for the India Forum, says India is objectively on the side of the aggressors. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, I find our silences and our actions quite inexplicable, frankly. I mean, not to have anything to say when the head of state of a state you recognize in your neighborhood is assassinated by another country, by not signing the condolence book for 5 days and then sending the foreign secretary, not the foreign minister, not the prime minister. I mean, that, to my mind, and to stay absolutely silent on the issues, not to condemn the attack, not to, and this has unfortunately become part of a pattern. You're not willing to call the Russian invasion of Ukraine an invasion. You're not willing to vote when Palestinians are being slaughtered in Gaza on the West Bank. You're not willing to vote. You abstain on votes in the UN. I find this very strange and rather sad that a country like India, with its traditions, should end up being absolutely mum. I suppose that's why Srinath thinks that we are objectively on the side of the aggressors.
Tell me, under Nehru, under Indira Gandhi, under Rajiv Gandhi, under Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Narasimha Rao, India always had the strength, the courage, and the righteousness to call out wrong. Here, clearly, wrong is happening. It's happening to a country we consider a civilizational friend. Our silence is letting us down itself, isn't it? We're betraying our
Well,
own principles.
it's not only these great prime ministers you mentioned, Chandrasekhar, when he was prime minister, or Charan Singh when he was prime minister, when the Soviets invaded Afghanistan, he was more than happy to say what he thought about it and to tell the Soviets off. And that's been consistent. Indian behavior in the past was consistent, which is why I find this inexplicable today.
So, would you say the Modi government has diminished India's stature and standing?
You know, India is bigger than a government. So, in the long run, it depends really on what we do and how we behave now in the future. But certainly, this has not helped.
Let me raise one other aspect of India's behavior. The Prime Minister visited Israel roughly 36 hours before Israeli strikes on Iran began. And in his speech to the Knesset, he said, and I'm quoting him, India stands with Israel firmly, with full conviction in this moment. And then he added, and beyond. Does that sound like an endorsement of whatever Israel might choose to do? And what it chose to do was, in fact, strike Iran.
I really don't know what was in his mind. Did he know what was coming? It seemed evident to most of us for quite some time before that the attack was coming. But did he know? If he knew, yes, what you say is true. If he didn't know, then frankly, somebody should have told him, and the system is not working. So I'm not really sure what to make of that. Certainly, the visit at that time and much of what was said is not a good look internationally.
Was the timing of the visit a mistake? Because after all, as you said, everyone was speculating not if the attack will happen, but when it will happen. In those circumstances, to choose to go to Israel and then to choose to firmly and with full conviction stand with Israel, both in this moment and beyond, was the timing of the visit wrong? Was that sentence itself a mistake?
Well, you have to ask those who made these decisions why they did that. Frankly, for the rest of us to comment on it really doesn't add either anything to it. But certainly, as I said, it's not a good look, and it is inexplicable to me.
On the other hand, the Prime Minister may have completely refused and failed, as did the Foreign Minister, to criticize the killing of Ayatollah Khamenei. Neither of them have even condoled it. The condolence happened when the Foreign Secretary visited the Iranian embassy 5 full days later. But on the other hand, the Prime Minister himself contacted the heads of Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Jordan. Doesn't it look as if India has deliberately distanced itself from Iran? Something I'd like to point out that even Pakistan, despite its dependence on Trump, did not do. Shehbaz Sharif was critical of the attack on Ayatollah Khamenei.
You know, frankly, Karan, you need to ask the government these questions. And there's no point you and I agreeing on what we think of it.
But I'm asking you your
Yes.
opinion as a former highly respected national security
No,
advisor.
I've made it quite clear that I think it's inexplicable. It's not a good look. And I don't see why I don't approve of our being mum and trying to avoid the issues and ducking on anything that really matters. Calling up the Gulf states when they were attacked, I think is a good thing. But then, as you said, it looks very unfair when you do it only to one side and not the other.
What about India's response to the torpedoing of IRIS Dina in the Indian Ocean? India presents itself as the net security provider and guardian of the Indian Ocean region. So, is our silence when a ship that was a guest of ours just a couple of days earlier is sunk? Is our silence in keeping with our claim to be net security providers and guardians?
You know, we did give sanctuary to another ship, another Iranian ship, which had asked to come into our ports, which at the same time, out of the three Iranian ships which participated, one finally ended up being crewed by the Sri Lankans and taken into a Sri Lankan port. Another one we did take over. They are at war. And legally speaking, it's not our responsibility to protect ships in the high seas. And they were in the high seas off Sri Lanka. They were well beyond the 12 nautical miles from Galle, which would have constituted Sri Lankan territorial waters, not ours. So, to that extent, I'm not sure where we've ever said that we are net security providers and provide security throughout the Indian Ocean. I don't think any government of India has ever claimed that, and it would be foolish to do that.
The
Because
Hindu
frankly, the
reported it.
Indian
The
Ocean has
Hindu reported it.
they might report it, but I don't think a government of India that's responsible has ever said that. And I'd like to see where they said this. We might say that we would help people with their security, and we do work with people
According
across
to
the
Al
Indian Ocean.
Jazeera, if I recall correctly, the Prime Minister said this last year that India was the guardians, according to Al Jazeera.
You know, it's a general statement. We're a guardian, okay, we're a guardian. That doesn't mean we're a chowkidar of the entire Indian Ocean.
But the point I'm asking is this: did our conscience and our morality require at least a message of condolence and regret at the downing of Sri Lankan cadets? They're not even full-fledged sailors. Sri Lankan, sorry, forgive me, Iranian cadets, not even full-fledged sailors. Should our conscience have required us to at least express condolence and regret?
That's why I said that I don't understand our silences on all this. And this is a consistent pattern of behavior now, of anything that matters, that happens in our neighborhood, that actually affects our security. We are mum in public.
Which is not the Indian tradition, is it?
Not at all. Not at all. And it doesn't serve our interests either.
One thing that stands out is that all the other founding members of BRICS, Brazil, Russia, China, South Africa, have voiced their concern and criticism both over the US Israel strikes on Iran and, in particular, over the killing of Ayatollah Khamenei. India is the only exception amongst them. Yet the BRICS summit is scheduled to be held in India later this year. How do you think the BRICS countries will view India's silence?
Not very well, not at all. And I think they'd find it hard to explain why we are silent on these issues and why we're not willing to say, you know, after all, your motto on your national emblem is Satyameva Jayate. And yet you're not willing to express this truth and have done so now, as I said, for several years on all the issues that matter. They find this inexplicable, and it certainly diminishes your reputation and your image in the world, but it also diminishes your effectiveness in the world.
India
Because people
also,
take your word much less seriously. If you're seen as a trimmer, as somebody who says only things that are convenient and easy to say.
and that is how we're in danger of being perceived as trimmers, trimming to the American wind, in fact.
Exactly.
India likes to present itself as the leader of the global south. We've organized several conferences of the global south, and we've been proud by the attendance that's happened. Has our response to the US Israel strikes strengthened or damaged our claim to be leaders of the global south?
I'm not sure that's a very sensible thing to claim. because the Global South, one thing that unites the Global South is their experience of colonialism. And what colonialism did was to vaccinate us all against self-appointed leaders, against the white man's burden, against people who claim to speak for our interests and know our interests better than us, and the sort of paternalism that is implied in claims of leadership. So I'm not sure that claiming to be leader of the Global South and so on is actually the right way to go about our business in the Global South. The obvious response to that is who elected you? And I'm not sure that that's really a goal, a policy goal. It might be used for propaganda internally. Externally, it doesn't play. In fact, externally, it's counterproductive. It might be used for internal propaganda, but I wouldn't take all that too seriously.
Finally,
And
Mr.
if you
Menon,
want to, if you are really a leader, I mean, you have to then show initiatives that you've taken where people then are willing to follow you on issues that really matter to the Global South, developing country debt, for instance, or any of these. So I wouldn't go that far as to say, oh, this dents India's claims to be global leader. I'm not sure that that claim is necessary or valid, even though I know some people have made it. And secondly, I'm not sure how that serves India's interests.
finally, Mr. Menon, we in India like to believe, and this government in particular has claimed, that India's foreign policy has charted a course of strategic autonomy. Was India's response to the US-Israel strikes and to the killing of Ayatollah Khamenei an illustration of that or a contradiction of it?
Well, it's an example of autonomy from previous Indian foreign policy. That's the best you can say about it.
In other words, it's a contradiction of the previous foreign policy, isn't it?
It is.
I thank you, Mr. Menon, for the time you've given me. I thank you in particular for your analysis and understanding both of the Iran-US war against, the Israel-US war against Iran, but also your analysis and understanding of India's response to the situation. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Karan.
Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.